because we're going to get into Antarctica. And I want to start off first by asking Tim to explain some of the history of Antarctica that you're aware of.
Right. So every time I was bored, I was looking into whatever documents I could get my hands on and just read them, because it portrays a whole different other history compared to what you find in the books. Information that are different to the conventional information.
Right, than the normal history.
Right.
Right.
So what do we know? We certainly have seen that there's the Nazis itself were quite interested in, well, the search for Atlantis and mysterious places all around the globe. So they had missions going to Egypt, had missions going to Tibet, to India, and they were looking for things, whatever they could get their hands on. This is because Hitler himself was very interested in finding alternative history facts, because he was interested in art as well, and he was a collector himself. Conventional history shows that as well, that he's had a big interest in all these myths and secrets around the world. We also know that there's a second key player in the Third Reich that was, kind of opposing Hitler himself, which was Himmler. Himmler himself, he grew to the second man of power in the Third Reich. And over time, you can see that this SS state somehow became a force in itself, almost like the first breakaway civilization that history of this planet has ever had. And it's quite fascinating because he has done extensive research, for example, on witches and magic powers. That is what the documents are indicating, that some thousands of years ago, Antarctica wasn't an ice place, but it was quite Mediterranean in its climate. Because at that time the pole shifts were different, the poles,
right,
the magnetic poles were different on the planet. So the weather was different, and they arranged the first mission down there, which was done through a ship that they constructed only for that particular case. In fact, it was one of the first aircraft carriers that was designed just to explore Antarctica.
What year was this?
Early 30s.
Right.
Do you know it?
Yeah, 1936.
So, okay, perfect. And Neuschwabenland, which was the name of the ship, and they had an aircraft on it, which where they could fly around Antarctica, and no country in the world at that time was interested in Antarctica.
Why were they so obsessed with it, Tim?
For two reasons, basically. At a certain time in history, Antarctica was populated, and it might have been a place that could have any kind of significance to the Nazis, because they, at least Himmler, believed very strongly in magic and psionic effects.
So they're looking for the secrets, maybe some artifacts, maybe some technology left behind by this ancient civilization.
100%. And the second reason is, with the cause of the war going less in favor for the Nazis at that time, they were looking for a remote base where they could, potentially do some things. And what we've seen in the document is that they created a special class of U-boats, which was called Cow class, actually, translated. And so those submarines were specially designed. They were the class that could dive the deepest at that time. What we've also seen in the documents, and we have that listed, is the amount of material that they, put down there. Machinery, a whole train, systems, technicians, everything. They went from Germany down to Antarctica so many times. And in the process of the World War, even more and more and more. And you have that listed. You can see all the material that they brought down there, which is immense. They have brought machinery down there in order to create steam and in order to create like an igloo effect down in Antarctica. We've also seen that when the war in Europe seems to have come to an end, there are some very interesting situations. So some people might say, yeah, Hitler might have gone down to Antarctica. I'm pretty convinced from what I've read that he died in the bunker in Berlin at that time. They've done pretty extensive, analysis on the teeth and the skull, which the Russians took to Moscow.
What do you think about that, Rick?
Well, I believe
okay.
he died. Yeah, I believe he died.
did?
He
Okay.
died in Berlin in a bunker. I mean, there's so much evidence
Yes.
that would show that he died